I never imagined that the child I held in my arms, the girl I put through private school and bought a debt-free home for, would look me in the eye and tell me that spending my own money was legally defined as stealing her future. My name is Oscar Valentino. I'm 62 years old, and until recently I thought I had successfully navigated the transition from a high-pressure career in commercial real estate to a peaceful, well-earned retirement. I spent 40 years building a portfolio of properties from the ground up, starting with a single duplex in a bad neighborhood and ending with luxury high-rises. I missed birthdays, I worked weekends, and I sacrificed my own health to ensure my family would never know the hunger I grew up with. I thought that sacrifice meant something. I thought it bought loyalty. I was wrong. It only bought entitlement. To understand the knife in my back, you have to understand the hand that held it. My daughter Vanessa, she is 34 years old, though if you listen to her speak about the world, you'd think she was a helpless teenager. Vanessa has never heard the word no without interpreting it as a personal attack. When she crashed the Mercedes I bought her for her sweet 16, she didn't apologize. She asked when the replacement was arriving. When she dropped out of 3 different universities, she blamed the professors, the curriculum, the dorms, never her own lack of discipline. And for years, I enabled it. That's my cross to bear. I felt guilty about the divorce from her mother, Brenda, 15 years ago. I tried to fill the silence in our broken home with cash. Brenda, of course, took every opportunity to paint me as the villain. She told Vanessa that I left because I was selfish, not because Brenda had drained our joint accounts to fund a gambling habit I kept secret to protect her reputation. So Vanessa grew up with a warped view of reality. Daddy is a walking ATM and mommy is the victim. Everything changed 2 years ago when I met Alina. Alina is 55, a retired literature professor, and the first woman I've been with who didn't care about the balance in my checkbook. She drives a 10-year-old Honda, reads paperback books in the park, and makes me laugh in a way I hadn't in decades. For the first time, I wasn't Oscar the provider or Oscar the architect. I was just Oscar. When I introduced Alina to Vanessa, I expected some friction. I didn't expect a declaration of war. We met at an upscale Italian restaurant, Vanessa's choice naturally since she assumed I was paying. Vanessa arrived 20 minutes late, ordered the most expensive bottle of wine without asking, and didn't even look Alina in the eye. So, Vanessa said, swirling her glass, looking at Alina like she was a stain on the tablecloth. "You're the new girlfriend, what is it you do again? Or are you retired?" She used air quotes around the word retired. "I taught literature for 30 years, Alina said, smiling gracefully, refusing to take the bait. "Now I volunteer at the library and travel." "Travel," Vanessa scoffed, "must be nice." "I've been trying to get to Bali for 6 months, but someone asterisk," she shot a glare at me, "says it's not in the budget this year." I cleared my throat. "Vanessa, you're 34. If you want to go to Bali, you have a job, use your own budget." "My job doesn't pay for luxury villas, Dad," she snapped, her mask slipping instantly. "And neither does yours, apparently, if you're spending it all on dates." That was the first red flag. The assumption that my money was a static resource, a pie that she was entitled to eat, and anyone else taking a slice was a thief. Over the next year, the tension metastasized. Every time I took Alina on a trip, I'd get a barrage of texts from Vanessa. "Must be nice to blow 10K on a cruise while your daughter drives a car with 50,000 miles on it." Or, "Mom says you're neglecting your family obligations to play sugar daddy." I ignored it. I set boundaries. I told her that my financial life was private, but the poison was spreading. Brenda was in her ear, feeding her paranoia. Brenda knew that if I remarried, the alimony train, which had legally ended years ago but which I occasionally supplemented out of kindness, would be definitively over. She knew a new wife meant a new will. The breaking point came 6 months ago. I proposed to Alina. I didn't make a public spectacle of it. We were at home cooking dinner. It was quiet and perfect. When I called Vanessa to tell her the news, there was a long, cold silence on the other end of the line. "You're kidding," she finally said. "I'm very happy, Vanessa." "I was hoping you could be happy for me." "Happy you're 62, Dad. You don't get married at 62. You settle down and protect your assets for your family. Does she know? Does she know you're not going to leave her anything?" "Lilina and I haven't discussed my estate because she isn't interested in it," I said, my voice hardening. "And frankly, neither should you be." I am your child, she screamed. I am your heir. If you marry this woman, she becomes your next of kin. She gets medical power of attorney. She gets the house. What happens to me? You are an adult, I said, trembling with a mixture of rage and heartbreak. You have a degree, you have a job, you have the house I bought you. You will be fine. She hung up on me. For weeks. It was radio silence. No congratulations, no RSVP to the small ceremony we planned, just quiet. I foolishly thought she was processing it. I thought maybe, just maybe, she was realizing how bratty she sounded and was working up the courage to apologize. I was naive. She wasn't processing, she was plotting. The betrayal didn't happen in a shouting match. It arrived via FedEx on a Tuesday morning. I was drinking coffee on the patio, watching the sun rise. Alina was inside doing a crossword puzzle. The courier handed me a thick, rigid cardboard envelope. The return address wasn't Vanessa's. It was a law firm downtown, a firm known for aggressive, high-conflict litigation. My hands shook as I pulled the tab. Inside was a 20-page document bound in heavy blue paper. It was a demand letter. But it wasn't just a demand, it was an assassination of my character. The letter, drafted on behalf of Vanessa, claimed that I was suffering from diminished capacity and was falling victim to undue influence by a predatory third party, Alina. It stated that my recent spending habits were erratic and inconsistent with previous behavior, citing the engagement ring and 2 vacations as proof of mental decline. But here is where the greed truly showed its face. The letter demanded 3 things. First, I was to immediately annul my engagement to Alina. Second, I was to grant Vanessa durable power of attorney over all my financial accounts to protect the estate from further dissipation. Third, and this is the part that made my blood run cold, I was to place my entire real estate portfolio into an irrevocable trust, with Vanessa named as the sole beneficiary, providing me only a living allowance determined by a trustee of her choosing. She didn't just want to stop the wedding. She wanted to strip me of my autonomy. She wanted to put me on an allowance. She wanted to treat me like a senile geriatric patient so she could secure the bag before I even died. I sat there, the papers fluttering in the morning breeze, feeling a physical pain in my chest. This wasn't just greed, this was hatred. To declare your own father mentally incompetent, to threaten to drag him into court and humiliate him publicly, forcing him to prove his own sanity. I read the final paragraph. It was an ultimatum. If these demands are not met within 14 days, Ms. Valentino is prepared to file a petition for conservatorship with the Superior Court. Citing your inability to manage your affairs and the immediate threat to the family estate posed by your relationship with Ms. Alina Rostova. She was threatening to Britney Spears me. I walked inside, the papers heavy in my hand. Alina looked up, saw my face, and her smile vanished. Oscar, what is it? Is it your heart? No, I said, my voice sounding like gravel. It's my daughter. I handed her the letter. She read it, her eyes widening, her hand going to her mouth. She didn't get angry. She started to cry, not for herself, but for me. She thinks you're crazy. Alina whispered, because you love me. What? She doesn't think I'm crazy, I said, the realization sharpening my mind like a razor. She thinks I'm weak. She thinks I'm so afraid of losing her, so afraid of a scandal, that I'll sign over my life just to keep the peace. I looked at the phone. I could call her, I could scream, I could beg. That's what the old Oscar would have done, the Oscar who felt guilty for the divorce, the Oscar who just wanted everyone to get along. But that Oscar died the moment I read the phrase living allowance. Vanessa had made a critical, fatal error. She assumed that because I was generous, I was stupid. She assumed that my silence over the years was submission. She forgot that I didn't inherit my money, I made it. I dealt with sharks in the construction industry in the 80s. I've negotiated with corrupt unions, fought zoning boards, and outmaneuvered competitors who wanted to bury me. She brought a knife to a gunfight. I didn't call Vanessa. I didn't call Brenda. I walked into my study and opened my safe. I pulled out my existing will, the one that left Vanessa everything, a portfolio worth roughly $8 million. I stared at it for a moment. Then I picked up the phone and dialed the number of my personal attorney, Marcus. Marcus has been with me for 30 years. He's the kind of lawyer who doesn't advertise on billboards because his clients don't want people to know he exists. Marcus, I said when he picked up. Oscar, everything all right? You sound focused. I need to come in today, and I need you to clear your schedule for the afternoon. What's happened? Vanessa sent me a letter. She's threatening a conservatorship if I don't give her control of my assets and dump Alina. There was a silence on the line, then a low, dry chuckle. She put that in writing, Marcus asked, 20 pages of it. Oscar, Marcus said, his voice dropping into a tone I recognized, the tone of a predator spotting wounded prey. Please tell me she signed the demand letter herself, or that her lawyer explicitly stated these demands are coming from her instructions. It says, on behalf of our client, Vanessa Valentino, who is acting to preserve her rightful inheritance. Marcus laughed again. Bring the letter and bring your current will, we're going to have some fun. I drove to his office with a cold resolve. I wasn't sad anymore. The grief had been cauterized by the sheer audacity of her entitlement. When I sat down in Marcus's leather chair, he skimmed the letter, shaking his head. This is amateur hour, he said, tossing it onto the desk. She's trying to use a sledgehammer to crack a nut, but she just dropped the sledgehammer on her own foot. She's citing undue influence while simultaneously demanding you sign over your assets to asterisk her under duress. It's extortion dressed up in a cheap suit. Can she do it? Can she get a conservatorship? I asked. On a healthy 62-year-old man who runs his own investments and just passed a physical with flying colors. No judge would touch this. It's a scare tactic. She wants you to panic. Marcus leaned forward. But here is the beautiful part, Oscar. Do you remember the no contest clause we inserted in your trust 5 years ago? The specific wording we used regarding interference. I frowned, trying to recall the legal jargon. Vaguely. Marcus opened a file. Clause 14, Section B***, if any beneficiary seeks to obtain an adjudication in any proceeding attacking or contesting the validity of this trust, or seeks to prevent any provision from being carried out in accordance with its terms, including attempts to legally restrict the grantor's capacity to manage said assets, their share is revoked. He looked up at me over his glasses. By sending this letter, threatening legal action to restrict your capacity specifically to secure her inheritance, she has triggered the disinheritance clause of the very fortune she's trying to steal. She didn't just shoot herself in the foot, Oscar. She blew her leg off. So she gets nothing. Legally, yes, we can enforce this right now, but Marcus tapped his pen on the desk. If we just quietly cut her out, she won't know until you die, and she'll spend the next 20 years making your life hell, harassing Alina and filing more nuisance lawsuits. I don't want to wait until I die, I said. I want this over. I want her out of my life. Marcus smiled, a shark-like grin. Then we don't just update the will, we accept her invitation to negotiate. She wants a response. Let's give her one. She wants to talk about the future of the estate. Let's invite her and her lawyer here. We'll do exactly what she asked. We'll disclose everything. You want to bring her here? Oh yes, I want to look her in the eye when we explain that the letter she just paid a lawyer $5,000 to write was actually the most expensive document in history. I want to watch her face when she realizes she just traded $8 million for a temper tantrum. I sat back, the image of Vanessa's face, smug, entitled, waiting for me to fold, flashed in my mind. Then I imagined the look on her face when the trap snapped shut. Set the meeting, I said. Marcus picked up the phone. I'll tell them you're ready to discuss the terms of the transition. She'll think you've capitulated. She'll come in expecting a coronation. I walked out of that office feeling lighter than I had in years. I went home to Alina, took her hand, and told her we were going to have a meeting with Vanessa in 3 days. Is everything okay? Alina asked, worried. Everything is perfect, I said. Vanessa wanted to be treated like a serious adult with a legal stake in my life. I'm going to give her exactly what she asked for. The next 3 days were a blur of preparation. Vanessa, thinking she had won, texted me, "Glad you're finally seeing reason, Dad. We can put this behind us once the papers are signed. I just want what's best for the family." I didn't reply. The morning of the meeting, the sky was gray and heavy. I put on my best suit. I drove to Marcus's office. Vanessa was already there, sitting in the conference room with a man I assumed was her lawyer, a greasy-looking guy in a suit that was a little too shiny. Vanessa looked triumphant. She didn't stand up when I entered, she just smirked. "Hi, Dad," she said, her voice dripping with fake concern. "I'm glad we could do this civilly. Brenda sends her love." That name, Brenda, she just had to twist the knife one last time. I sat down at the head of the table. Marcus sat beside me. He placed a single, thin folder on the table. So, Vanessa's lawyer started, opening his briefcase. "We have prepared the transfer documents for the trust. We've also outlined the stipend arrangement for Mr. Valentino's living expenses. If we can just—" "Close your briefcase," Marcus said. His voice wasn't loud, but it stopped the room cold. "Excuse me," the lawyer blinked. "We aren't here to sign your documents," Marcus said calmly. "We are here to acknowledge receipt of your letter dated October 14th. Vanessa rolled her eyes. "Dad, stop stalling. You know you can't win this. If you don't sign, we file the petition tomorrow. Do you really want your medical records read in open court?" I looked at my daughter, really looked at her. I saw the greed in her eyes. There was no love there, just calculation. "Vanessa," I said softly, "you wanted to ensure the safety of my assets. You were worried that my money was being mishandled." "Exactly," she said, leaning forward. "I'm protecting the family legacy." "What?" "Well," I said, sliding the folder toward her, "you'll be happy to know the legacy is perfectly safe, because as of this morning, you are no longer part of it." Vanessa laughed, a short, nervous bark. "What are you talking about? You can't cut me out. I'll sue you for everything. That's what the conservatorship is for." "You don't understand," Marcus interrupted, his voice dropping an octave. "You didn't need to sue to be cut out. You did it yourself." Marcus opened the folder and pointed to a highlighted paragraph. It was the no contest clause. "By formally threatening legal action to restrict Oscar's capacity and seize control of the estate," Marcus explained, enunciating every word, "you triggered the forfeiture clause in the existing trust. As of the moment your lawyer sent that letter, your status as a beneficiary was automatically revoked." The room went silent, the air conditioning hummed. Vanessa's lawyer snatched the paper, reading it frantically. His face went pale. He looked at Vanessa, then back at the paper. This is standard boilerplate," the lawyer stammered. "We can argue this wasn't a contest, it was a protective measure." "It's a demand for control under threat of litigation," Marcus countered. "It is the definition of an adversarial attack on the grantor's rights, and here is the best part." Marcus pulled out a second document. "Oscar executed a new will this morning, just to be safe. In this new will, he has explicitly referenced your letter as the reason for your disinheritance. He has left you the sum of $1 to prevent any claims of accidental omission." Vanessa's face turned a color I had never seen before, a mix of gray and purple. She looked at me, her mouth opening and closing like a fish. "Dad," she squeaked, You're joking, it's $8 million. It was $8 million, I corrected her. Now it's charity, it's a new wing for the local hospital, it's a scholarship fund. And of course, it's a very comfortable life for my future wife, Alina." Vanessa stood up, her chair screeching against the floor. "You can't do this, I'm your daughter, you owe me." "I owed you a childhood," I said, standing up to meet her gaze. "I gave you that, I owed you an education, I gave you that, I owed you a start in life, I gave you a house. But I do not owe you my dignity, and I certainly do not owe you the money I worked for while you were busy complaining that I worked too much." "I'll sue," she screamed, slamming her hands on the table. "I'll tell everyone you're senile, I'll ruin you." "Go ahead," I said, buttoning my jacket. "Spend your own money on lawyers this time. See how far it gets you against a man who just freed up $8 million to defend himself." I turned to her lawyer, who was currently trying to shove papers back into his briefcase, looking like he wanted to vanish. "And you," I said to him, "you might want to check your malpractice insurance. You just let your client talk herself out of a fortune in writing." I walked out of the conference room. I could hear Vanessa screaming behind me, a primal, tantrum-filled shriek that echoed down the hallway. It was the sound of a spoiled child realizing the toy store was closed forever. I took the elevator down to the lobby where the sun was finally breaking through the clouds. I pulled out my phone and texted Alina. "It's done, let's go to Bali." Vanessa tried to sue, of course. She spent the next 2 years and the last of her savings trying to fight the trust, but Marcus was right. The letter she sent was the nail in her coffin. Every judge who saw it ruled that her actions were predatory. She lost her house, the one I had bought her, because she couldn't pay the property taxes without my help. Last I heard, she's working as a receptionist at a car dealership, living in an apartment Brenda pays for. She still tells anyone who will listen that I stole her inheritance. But I don't listen. I'm too busy enjoying my retirement. And every time I spend $1, I smile, knowing it's $1 she will never ever touch. But looking back, the satisfaction I feel now is hard-won. Because between the arrival of that demand letter and the final meeting in Marcus's office, there was a gap. A 14-day gap where Vanessa didn't just wait for my signature, she tried to break me. I need to tell you about those 14 days. I need you to understand that the meeting in the lawyer's office wasn't just a legal maneuver. It was a rescue mission for my own sanity. Because Vanessa didn't just want my money, she wanted to destroy the man who made it just to prove she could. It started 48 hours after the FedEx package arrived. I hadn't responded to the demand letter yet. Marcus and I were still strategizing, and I was trying to keep Alina calm. Alina, bless her heart, was trying to pack a bag. She thought she was the problem. She thought that if she left, Vanessa would stop. I had to hold her hands, look into her tear-filled eyes, and tell her that this wasn't about her, it was about a vulture spotting a carcass. That Wednesday, I went to the country club. I know it sounds cliché, the rich guy at the club, but I've been a member for 30 years. It's where I swim laps to keep my heart strong. It's where I play cards with guys I've known since we were laying bricks in the mud. It's my sanctuary, or it was. When I walked into the locker room, the silence was instant. Usually I'm greeted with a "Hey, Oscar," or a joke about my backhand. Today, heads turned away, conversation stopped mid-sentence. Jerry, a retired surgeon and one of my oldest friends, was tying his shoes on the bench. He didn't look up. "Jerry," I said, opening my locker, "how's the hip?" Jerry sighed, a heavy, tired sound. He stood up and looked at me with a mix of pity and discomfort. "Oscar, look, I don't want to get in the middle of family business, but maybe you should go home." "Excuse me," I stopped, my towel in hand. "The email, Oscar," Jerry said, lowering his voice. "The board got an email." "From your daughter." My stomach dropped. What did she say? Jerry looked around to make sure we were alone. "She contacted the membership committee. She claimed that you're suffering from rapid cognitive decline. She said you had an episode at the house and that for the safety of the other members, your access should be suspended until she can get a medical guardian appointed." I felt the blood drain from my face. It wasn't just the lie, it was the precision of it. She knew the club bylaws. She knew that an allegation of medical instability triggered an automatic review. She told them I'm crazy. I whispered. "She told them you were violent," Jerry corrected me, his eyes sad. "She said you threw a steak knife at her during a confused rage, Oscar." She attached a photo of a cut on her arm. I gripped the locker door so hard the metal bit into my palm, a steak knife. I hadn't seen Vanessa in 3 weeks, and our last meal together had been at a restaurant with plastic butter knives. She had cut herself or faked it to ban me from my own swim practice. "I didn't do that, Jerry," I said, my voice shaking not with age but with fury. "You know me." "I do," Jerry said, "but the board is terrified of liability. They're suspending your fob, Oscar, just until it's sorted out. I'm sorry." I walked out of the club with my head high, but inside I was screaming. This was the doubling down. She wasn't waiting for the legal system. She was running a parallel campaign to isolate me, to strip away my support network, to make me feel so alone and humiliated that I would sign her papers just to make it stop. But the club was just the opening salvo. 2 nights later, the war came to my front door. It was 2:00 a.m. Alina and I were asleep. The house was dark. Suddenly, the bedroom was awash in blue and red light flashing through the sheer curtains. Then came the pounding on the front door. Heavy, authoritative pounding. "Police, open up." I scrambled out of bed, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. Alina sat up, gasping, clutching the duvet. "Oscar, what is it? Is there a fire?" "Stay here," I commanded, grabbing my robe. I ran down the stairs, my mind racing. Had there been an accident? Was the house being swatted? I threw open the door. 2 uniformed officers stood on my porch, hands resting near their holsters. Behind them, an ambulance idled in the driveway, its diesel engine rumbling in the quiet night. "Oscar Valentino." The older officer asked, shining a flashlight in my face. Yes, what's going on? Sir, we received a 911 call from a family member stating that you were threatening self-harm, and we're currently holding a hostage in the residence. I stared at him, my mouth agape. What? That's insane. I'm sleeping. My fiancée is sleeping. Is there a Ms. Rostova in the home? Yes, she's upstairs. We need to see her, sir, immediately. We need to confirm she's unharmed. What? For the next 20 minutes, I had to endure the humiliation of having police officers search my home. They separated me from Alina. They questioned her in the kitchen while I sat in the living room guarded by a rookie cop who looked at me like I was a ticking time bomb. I could hear Alina crying in the other room. I could hear her explaining that we were fine, that we were happy, that we were just watching a movie before bed. When the officers finally reconvened in the hallway, the tension broke. They realized it was a hoax, but they had to follow protocol. The caller identified herself as Vanessa Valentino, the sergeant told me, closing his notepad. She claimed you called her in a delirium, saying you were going to end it all because the woman in your house was stealing your soul. She's lying, I said, my voice cold and flat. She's trying to force a conservatorship. She's trying to build a paper trail of instability. The sergeant sighed. Mr. Valentino, this is a civil matter, but misuse of 911 is a crime if you want to press charges. No, I said, not yet, I'll handle this. I watched them leave. I watched the ambulance back out of my driveway. All the neighbors' lights were on. I could see Mrs. Higgins across the street peering through her blinds. By morning, the rumor would be that Oscar was suicidal. That Oscar had finally cracked. I walked back inside. Alina was sitting at the kitchen table, her hands trembling around a mug of tea. She looked small, defeated. She hates us this much. Alina whispered she would send men with guns to our house. It's not hate, Alina, I said, realizing the terrifying truth. It's strategy. If the police had found me agitated, if I had yelled, if I had resisted, they would have put me on a 72-hour psychiatric hold. And once I'm in the system, Vanessa files for emergency temporary guardianship. She becomes my legal voice. She gets the keys to the bank accounts. She wasn't just being a brat, she was trying to legally kidnap me. The next morning, the phone calls started, not from Vanessa, but from Brenda. I hadn't spoken to my ex-wife in 5 years. She had no reason to call me. But my cell phone rang at 9:00 a.m. and there was her name. I put it on speaker so Alina could hear. Hello, Brenda. Oscar, her voice was smoky, dripping with faux sympathy. I heard about the police last night. My God, Vanessa is beside herself with worry. Vanessa called them, Brenda. It was a swatting attempt. Oh, stop it, Brenda snapped, dropping the act instantly. The girl is terrified. She says you sound distinct, slurring your words, forgetting things. Oscar, be reasonable. We all know you're not entirely there anymore. That little girlfriend of yours is clearly manipulating a vulnerable senior citizen. I am 62, Brenda. I ran a half marathon last month. You're confused, Brenda said, her voice turning styly. And if you don't sign those papers Vanessa sent, we're going to have to take drastic measures. We have statements, Oscar. I've written a statement about your behavior during our marriage, about your temper, your erratic spending. You mean the gambling debts I paid off for you? I asked. I mean the abuse, she said. The word hung in the air like toxic gas. Emotional abuse, financial control. It establishes a pattern, Oscar. If we go to court, I will testify that you have a history of mental instability dating back 20 years. Do you really want Alina to hear about the real Oscar? It was blackmail, pure and simple. They were fabricating a history of madness to justify stealing my future. You're bluffing, I said. AMI, Brenda laughed. You have a reputation, Oscar. You're a respected businessman. Imagine the headlines. Local real estate mogul dragged out of court in straitjacket. Daughter saves father from predatory mistress. We control the narrative, Oscar, because we're the concerned family. You're just the old man who lost his mind over a piece of tail. I hung up. My hands weren't shaking anymore. They were stone still. I looked at Alina. She wasn't crying now. She looked angry. They're going to destroy you, she said. They're trying to, I corrected. That afternoon, the final straw landed. It wasn't a police car or a phone call. It was a locksmith. I was in my study trying to compile the documents Marcus had asked for when I heard a drill whining at the front door. I walked out to see a man in blue coveralls drilling into my deadbolt. "Hey," I shouted, banging on the glass. "What the hell are you doing?" The man jumped, startled. He looked at a clipboard, then at me. He shouted through the glass, "Work order, changing the cylinders." I opened the door, ready to throw him off the porch. "I didn't order a lock change." "Owner did," the man said, holding up a work order on his tablet. "Vanessa Valentino said the current tenant, that's you I guess, lost the keys and has dementia, so we need to secure the property for the family." "Get off my property," I growled, stepping into his personal space. "Now, before I call the cops and tell them you're breaking and entering." "Look, buddy, I have a signed order here." "I am the owner," I roared, my voice echoing down the street. "Check the deed." "Vanessa Valentino doesn't own a brick of this house. She sent you here to lock me out of my own home." The locksmith looked at my face, saw the absolute clarity of my rage, and backed down. He packed his drill. "I'm leaving, you people need to sort your shit out." I watched him drive away. That was the moment. That was the crossover point. They had tried to ruin my reputation at the club. They had tried to get me committed by the police. They had threatened to perjure themselves in court to paint me as an abuser. And now they were physically trying to lock me out of my own sanctuary. They didn't see me as a father or a husband. They saw me as an obstacle, a malfunctioning ATM that needed to be unplugged and rebooted under new management. Well, I went back inside. The house was quiet, but it felt different now. It wasn't a home anymore, it was a fortress under siege. I walked into the kitchen where Alina was sitting. "Get your coat," I said. "Where are we going?" "We're going to Marcus's office," I said. "I'm done waiting for the deadline. I'm done playing defense." "Are you going to sign?" she asked, her voice trembling. I looked at the woman I loved. I looked at the life we were trying to build. And then I thought about Vanessa's face when she talked about her inheritance. "No," I said. "I'm going to make sure that the only thing Vanessa ever inherits from me is the bill for her lawyer." I grabbed the FedEx envelope from the counter. It was crinkled now, stained with a coffee ring, battered by the week of hell we just survived. I dialed Marcus. "Change of plans," I told him when he answered. "We're not just responding to the letter, we're responding to the war." "What did she do?" Marcus asked. "She sent the cops, she sent a locksmith, she sent Brenda." There was a long pause on the line. Then Marcus's voice came back, lower, darker. "Okay, that changes things. That's not just a contest of the will, Oscar. That's overt acts of aggression. We can use that." "I don't want to just use it," I said. "I want to end it." "Then bring the file," Marcus said, "and bring the checkbook, because we're about to throw a party she'll never forget." I hung up the phone. The fear was gone. The sadness was gone. All that was left was a cold, hard clarity. I wasn't Oscar the provider anymore. I wasn't Oscar the dad. I was Oscar the architect, and I was about to design my daughter's ruin. We walked into Marcus's office at 9 sharp. The conference room was a glass-walled shark tank overlooking the city skyline, the kind of room designed to make people feel small. Vanessa was already there. She was sitting at the head of the table, a spot usually reserved for the client. Her lawyer sat next to her. He wasn't the slick corporate shark I expected. He was a disheveled man in a suit that fit poorly, sweating slightly despite the aggressive air conditioning. When I entered with Alina and Marcus, Vanessa didn't stand. She didn't smile. She just checked her watch, tapped a manicured fingernail on the mahogany table, and sighed. "You're late," she said. "I have a spinning class at 11, so let's make this quick." I pulled out a chair for Alina, then sat opposite my daughter. I looked at her, really looked at her. I was searching for the little girl who used to cry when she scraped her knee. I was looking for the teenager who promised she'd make me proud, but all I saw was Brenda, the same tilt of the chin, the same cold, calculating eyes that viewed people as assets to be liquidated. "Good morning, Vanessa," I said quietly. "Save the pleasantries, Dad," she snapped. She gestured to her lawyer. "Mr. Snyder, please explain the terms of the surrender to my father." Mr. Snyder cleared his throat, shuffling a stack of papers. He didn't look me in the eye. "Mr. Valentino, given the unfortunate incidents of the last week and the clear evidence of your declining capacity to manage your affairs, my client is willing to forego a public competency hearing." Provided, of course, you agree to the terms of the living trust as outlined in our previous correspondence. He slid a thick document across the table. This document appoints Vanessa as the sole trustee, Snyder continued, gaining a little confidence. It grants her immediate power of attorney over all real estate holdings and liquid assets. In exchange, you will receive a monthly stipend of $5,000, subject to review, and you will be allowed to remain in your current residence, providing Ms. Ristova vacates the premises within 30 days. Alina squeezed my hand under the table. Her grip was tight, but her face was stone. Vanessa smirked. It's a generous offer, Dad. Honestly, $5,000 is more than enough for bingo nights, and whatever it is you two do, I'm doing you a favor. I'm stopping you from embarrassing yourself. The room went silent. The hum of the ventilation system felt deafening. Marcus, who had been leaning back in his chair with his eyes half closed, finally sat up. He didn't touch the document Snyder had slid over. He didn't even look at it. He looked at Snyder. Mr. Snyder, Marcus said, his voice smooth and dangerous, like a car driving over gravel. I'm curious. Did you advise your client to send the police to Mr. Valentino's home at 2 in the morning? Snyder blinked. That was a personal family matter. It speaks to the urgency of the situation. In the locksmith, Marcus asked, did you authorize the attempt to forcibly change the locks on a property your client does not own? We were securing the asset, Vanessa interrupted, leaning forward. Dad was confused. He lost his keys. I was protecting the estate. Right, Marcus said. He opened his own leather folder. It contained a single sheet of paper. The problem, Ms. Valentino, is that you don't seem to understand the difference between protecting an estate and attempting a hostile takeover. And unfortunately for you, your father's trust was written by me, and I don't write documents with loopholes. I write them with trapdoors. Vanessa rolled her eyes. Oh God, here comes the legal lecture. Just sign the paper, Dad. Or do you want me to call the membership committee at the club again? I heard they're reviewing your status today. I spoke up then. They aren't reviewing my status, Vanessa. They reinstated me this morning. Her smirk faltered. What? Jerry called me, I said. It turns out when you accuse a member of being violent, the board requires a police report. And since the police report from the other night lists the incident as a malicious false report initiated by you *, the board didn't ban me, they banned you. Vanessa's face flushed a deep, ugly red. That's not fair. I was worried about you. No, I said, my voice hardening. You were squeezing me. You were trying to suffocate me until I tapped out. But you forgot one thing, Vanessa. In construction, before you pour the foundation, you have to survey the land. You didn't survey the land. You didn't read the trust. I nodded to Marcus. Marcus slid the single sheet of paper toward Snyder. Mr. Snyder, Marcus said, are you familiar with a no-contest clause, specifically a *terrorum* clause with a bad faith provision? Snyder picked up the paper. I watched his eyes scan the text. I saw the moment the blood drained from his face. His hand started to shake, rattling the paper against the table. This is standard, Snyder stammered, sweat breaking out on his forehead. This usually applies to contesting a will after death. Usually, Marcus agreed, but Oscar's trust is unique. Clause 14, Section B states that if any beneficiary attempts to legally restrict the grantor's rights, interferes with the grantor's quiet enjoyment of their assets, or alleges incapacity without 2 independent medical certifications, they are deemed to be contesting the trust. Marcus leaned forward, his shark-like grin fully visible now. And the penalty for contesting the trust is immediate and irrevocable disinheritance. Vanessa looked between Marcus and Snyder, confusion warping her features. What is he talking about? What does that mean? Snyder looked at his client, looking like he wanted to vomit. Vanessa, the letter we sent, the demand for conservatorship, the police call. What about them? She demanded. They triggered the clause, Snyder whispered. By formally claiming your father was incompetent to handle his money and demanding control under threat of litigation, you legally challenged the validity of the trust. So, Vanessa snapped, so we challenge it, we win. No, I said, the word hung in the air like a gavel strike. You don't understand, Vanessa, I said, my voice steady. The trap has already snapped. You didn't just threaten to sue me. You triggered the automatic removal of your name from the estate. It happened the moment that courier handed me your demand letter. You can't do that, she screamed, slamming her hand on the table. It's my money, I am your heir. You were asterisk my heir, I corrected her. You were set to inherit a portfolio worth $8 million. You would have never had to work another day in your life, but you couldn't wait, you got greedy. You wanted the golden goose, but you didn't want to wait for the farmer to die, so you tried to kill the farmer. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a checkbook. I uncapped my pen. Mr. Snyder, I said, as of this morning, the trust has been amended to remove Vanessa Valentino as a beneficiary completely. However, I am a generous man, and I know you have legal fees to pay. I wrote a check. I tore it out with a crisp, ripping sound. I slid it across the table to Vanessa. She stared at it. It was a check for $1. This is to prevent you from claiming I forgot you, I said. I didn't forget you, Vanessa. I remember everything. I remember the tuition. I remember the cars. I remember the bail money when you got that DUI. And I remember you sending a SWAT team to my house because you were afraid my new wife might spend a fraction of your money. Vanessa stood up, her chair crashing backward. She was trembling, her eyes wide with a mixture of rage and genuine terror. You're bluffing, she hissed. This is a scare tactic. Mom said you'd try this. Call your mother, I said cold. Tell her she's next. Tell her that if I hear one more whisper about abuse or instability, I will sue her for defamation, and I will fund that lawsuit with the $8 million you just lost. I will bury her in litigation until she has to sell her condo to pay the court fees. I stood up. Alina stood with me, looking taller, stronger than she ever had before. We're done here, I said. Mr. Snyder, I suggest you check your malpractice insurance. You allowed your client to sign a demand letter that cost her a fortune. If I were her, I'd sue you. Dad, wait. Vanessa's voice cracked. The arrogance was gone. The entitlement was shattering under the weight of reality. She rounded the table, reaching for my arm. Dad, please, I was just stressed. I didn't mean it. We can fix this. I'll fire Snyder. I'll apologize to Alina. I looked at her hand on my sleeve, the same hand that had dialed 911 to report a fake hostage situation. I gently but firmly removed her hand. You didn't want to father Vanessa, I said softly. You wanted a bank manager. Well, the bank is closed. But what am I going to do? She wailed, tears finally spilling over. I can't pay the mortgage on the house. I have credit card debt. You can't just leave me with nothing. You have a degree, I said, buttoning my jacket. You have your health. You have the same start in life that I gave you 20 years ago. I built an empire from a duplex in the slums, Vanessa. Let's see what you can build. I turned my back on her. Come on, Alina, I said. We have a flight to catch. We walked out of the conference room. Behind us, I heard Vanessa screaming at Snyder. I heard the sound of glass breaking, probably a water pitcher thrown against a wall. It was the sound of a toddler's tantrum, amplified by adult consequences. We took the elevator down to the lobby in silence. When the doors opened, the sun was blinding. The city noise rushed in, horns, sirens, people shouting. It sounded like music. Alina looked at me. Are you okay? I lost a daughter today, I said, feeling the weight of it in my chest. But I think I lost her a long time ago. Today was just the paperwork. And the house, Alina asked, the one she lives in. It's in the trust's name, I said. Marcus will start eviction proceedings on Monday. She has 30 days. That's more notice than she gave us. We got into my car. I checked my phone. There were 12 missed calls from Brenda. I blocked the number. Then I blocked Vanessa's number. It felt like cutting an anchor chain. The aftermath wasn't pretty, but it was quick. Vanessa tried to fight, of course. She found a lawyer who worked on contingency, a bottom feeder who thought he could shake me down, but Marcus was right. The no contest clause was ironclad. The judge threw out her case in the preliminary hearing. He actually scolded her in open court, calling her actions predatory and repugnant. Because she had no access to my funds, she couldn't sustain the lifestyle she felt she deserved. The trust reclaimed the house she was living in. We sold it and donated the proceeds to a charity that helps elderly victims of financial abuse. I thought that was a poetic touch. Brenda didn't fare much better. Once the money stopped flowing to Vanessa, Vanessa turned on her mother. They ended up in a vicious cycle of blame, living together in a small two-bedroom apartment, miserable and toxic, feeding off each other's bitterness. As for me, I'm currently sitting on a balcony in Bali. Alina is reading a paperback next to me. The sun is setting over the Indian Ocean, turning the water a brilliant, shimmering gold. I received an email from Marcus this morning. Vanessa filed for bankruptcy yesterday. I took a sip of my wine. I didn't feel happy about her failure. But I felt a profound, peaceful sense of justice. I spent 40 years building skyscrapers, ensuring they could withstand earthquakes and storms. But the most important structure I ever built was the wall that finally kept my toxicity out. I closed the laptop. Elena, I said. Yes, Oscar. What? Order the lobster, I smiled. We can afford it. The elevator ride down to the lobby was silent. It wasn't the heavy, suffocating silence of a funeral, but the clean, sterile silence of a hospital operating room after a tumor has been successfully removed. Alina held my hand, her grip tight, her knuckles white. She was waiting for me to crack. She was waiting for the father in me to override the architect, to hit the emergency stop button and run back upstairs to write a check. But the father in me was tired. He had been working overtime for 34 years, and he had just clocked out for the last time. When the doors slid open, the lobby was flooded with mid-morning sunlight. It blinded me for a second, a stark contrast to the dim Shark Tank atmosphere of the conference room. I checked my phone, 7 missed calls, all from Brenda. I didn't listen to the voicemails. I didn't need to. I knew exactly what they would say. She would cycle through the greatest hits, the guilt trips, the threats of public humiliation, the feigned medical emergencies. She would scream that I was abandoning my child, conveniently forgetting that she was the one who had armed that child with the weapons to attack me. I pressed the block caller button. Then I went to Vanessa's contact. I looked at her picture, a selfie she had taken on a yacht I paid for 3 summers ago, and I pressed block. For the first time in 2 decades, my phone was just a phone. It wasn't a leash. The fallout wasn't instantaneous. It was a slow, grinding collapse, like watching a building implode in slow motion. Vanessa didn't believe me. That was her second fatal mistake. She truly believed that the $1 check was a prop, a dramatic flair that I would retract once I cooled down. She went back to my house, and waited. She didn't pack. She didn't look for an apartment. She ordered takeout on a credit card that she didn't realize I had canceled 10 minutes after leaving the lawyer's office. The first reality check arrived 3 days later, not in the form of a text from me, but in the form of a decline notification at a sushi restaurant. I heard about it from Marcus. Apparently, Vanessa tried to run the emergency card I gave her for car repairs and medical issues. When the terminal flashed declined, she didn't panic. She called the bank and screamed at the teller, demanding to be transferred to the fraud department. She assumed it was a glitch. When the bank manager informed her that the primary account holder had closed the card, she reportedly threw her phone across the restaurant. Then came the eviction. I didn't handle it personally. I'm not a masochist. I let Marcus and the sheriff's department handle the logistics. Since the house was owned by the trust and she was no longer a beneficiary of that trust, she was technically a squatter. Marcus gave her the courtesy of a 30-day notice, a standard legal kindness. She tore it up. She taped the pieces to the front door with a note written in Sharpie that said, "I dare you." She spent those 30 days partying. She invited friends over, trashing the place, blasting music, trying to bait me into showing up. She wanted a confrontation. She wanted me to storm in there so she could weep and scream and force a negotiation. I never showed up. On the 31st day at 8 in the morning, the sheriff arrived. I saw the bodycam footage later. Marcus insisted I watch it to protect myself against any future claims of brutality. It was pathetic. Vanessa opened the door in her bathrobe, looking hungover and smug. She started reciting a script about tenants' rights and familial occupancy. The deputy didn't care about her script. He handed her the court order. He gave her 15 minutes to gather her essentials. She didn't gather essentials. She grabbed her jewelry box and her collection of designer handbags. She left her photo albums. She left her childhood teddy bear. She left the family heirlooms I had passed down to her. In the moment of crisis, she grabbed the things she could pawn. That told me everything I needed to know about who she really was. When they escorted her off the property, she wasn't crying. She was screaming threats. She screamed that she would burn the house down. She screamed that I was dead to her. As the squad car pulled away, leaving her on the curb with 3 Louis Vuitton bags and nowhere to go, she pulled out her phone and dialed Brenda. That was the beginning of the end for both of them. Vanessa moved into Brenda's 2-bedroom condo the next day. I can only imagine the atmosphere in that apartment. 2 narcissists, both convinced they were the victim, trapped in 800 square feet of beige carpeting and resentment. Brenda, who had spent years poisoning Vanessa against me, suddenly had to deal with the monster she had created. It's one thing to wind up a toy soldier and watch it march off to war. It's another thing entirely when that soldier marches into your living room and demands to be fed. Within a month, the rumors started circulating at the club. Brenda was complaining to anyone who would listen that Vanessa was ungrateful and messy. She told her bridge group that Vanessa refused to get a job because she was too traumatized by my abuse, but the money was running out. Brenda's alimony had ended years ago and she lived on a fixed income that couldn't support Vanessa's champagne tastes. That's when the second lawsuit happened. Vanessa found a lawyer who operated out of a strip mall next to a vape shop. He filed a suit claiming that the no contest clause was unconscionable and that I had coerced her into the meeting where she was disinherited. He tried to argue that I had mentally trapped her. I didn't even have to attend the hearing. Marcus went. He presented the judge with 3 things: the demand letter Vanessa sent threatening to conservator me, the police report from the fake 911 call, and the transcript of the meeting where I offered her the $1 check. The judge, a stern woman who had likely seen enough family drama to last 10 lifetimes, dismissed the case with prejudice. She ordered Vanessa to pay my legal fees. Since Vanessa had no money, the court placed a lien on her future earnings. That was the final nail. Vanessa wasn't just broke, she was in debt to the father she hated. So where is she now? It's been 2 years. I don't have spies, but this is a small town and people love to talk. Vanessa lost the Mercedes. It was repossessed from the parking lot of a Sephora. She's currently driving Brenda's 10-year-old sedan. She works as a receptionist at a high-volume car dealership on the highway. I drove past it once on my way to the airport. I saw her through the glass. She wasn't wearing designer clothes. She was wearing a polyester polo shirt with the dealership's logo. She looked tired. She looked older. She was arguing with a customer, her face twisted in that familiar sneer, but without the power of my bank account behind it, she just looked bitter. She hates the job. She tells everyone it's temporary. She tells her coworkers that she's currently in a legal battle for her rightful inheritance and that any day now the courts will see the truth and she'll be back on top. But the saddest part isn't Vanessa, it's Brenda. Brenda is trapped. She can't kick Vanessa out because Vanessa has nowhere to go, and Brenda's entire identity is built on being the good parent. So they are locked together in a misery of their own making. Brenda pays for Vanessa's food. Vanessa reminds Brenda that it's her fault they tried to sue in the first place. They scream at each other through the thin walls of that condo, 2 drowning swimmers trying to climb on top of each other to breathe. As for me, I did exactly what I said I would do. I married Alina. We didn't have a big wedding. We eloped to a small chapel in the vineyards of Tuscany. It was quiet. It was respectful. It was full of love, not leverage. I sold the big house. It had too many ghosts in the hallways. We bought a smaller place near the ocean, something with big windows and no guest room for ungrateful children. I set up the scholarship fund with the money that would have been Vanessa's inheritance. Every year I sign checks for 4 kids from the same bad neighborhood I grew up in. Kids who work 2 jobs, kids who know the value of a dollar. I read their letters of gratitude and I feel a warmth that Vanessa never gave me in 34 years. Sometimes, late at night, I think about her. I think about the little girl I held in my arms. I grieve for her. But then I remember the locksmith drilling into my door. I remember the police lights flashing in my bedroom window. I remember the look in her eyes when she realized the money was gone, not fear for me, but fear for her lifestyle. I didn't destroy her life. I just stopped shielding her from the consequences of her own personality. People tell me I'm cold. They say, but Oscar, she's your blood. They don't understand. Blood is just biology, family is behavior. And when you invite a viper into your bed because it shares your DNA, you don't get loyalty, you just get bit. I'm sipping coffee on my deck right now. The ocean is loud today. My phone is on the table, face up. It's quiet. It's the most expensive silence I've ever bought, and it was worth every penny.